But traveling solo with someone with an anxiety disorder taught me so much on how to about myself, of what am I capable of, how do I manage things, what are my triggers, how can I work through things, how do I make things okay when I'm scared or anxious or anything like that. So instead of trying to numb myself out of things, I face things head on and make decisions that um help me. I know how to tune into who I am. I know the environments that will heighten me, my anxiety. I know the types of cities that I don't really go to. I'm someone who, I don't like being around big crowds of people. I don't like busy touristy places where you're bothered and talked to a lot and try to be sold to. I don't like places where I always have to be looking over my shoulder of my belongings and safety. And so I think a superpower of me traveling solo was having an anxiety disorder, because it enabled me to find these places that are so serene and in nature, and small communities and small towns where, people like to call them off the beaten path or hidden gems, but they're really just places in this world that exist, that I was so grateful and honored to be able to find and visit, that fed my soul, that made me happy, that eased my anxiety. And travel is that connector piece, is that piece that people often turn to create the lifestyles they want, to create the businesses that they want, to have the relationships that they want to have, to be the happy person that they want to be. It just happens to be the thing that people fall into to be able to do that. And so no matter what type of category it is that people are interested in, I think it just boils down to, we are looking for ways to.
Do you think there's a tension between these two things? Do you think we should be putting in proper lines of delineation where AIs are kind of data tool that tells us what's happening, versus the reason why travel, which is attention on a very emotional base, which surely can never be replicated by AI.
Yeah, that's exactly it, though. There's a lot of things that AI can do and will be able to do, especially in the world of planning and booking trips for people. But there's also a lot of things it will never be able to do, which is to interact with people as a human being, that one-on-one, and understanding people. And that's why it's so important for the work that we do as in the Travel Coach Network, for travel advisors in particular, or anyone who provides travel experiences, because it's really about getting to understand who the traveler is on a human level.
Sahara, welcome to the Nifty Travel Podcast.
Hi, Alex. Thank you so much for having me.
No, you're most welcome. And one thing I always like to ask first off is about your earliest memories of travel.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I was someone, I didn't grow up traveling very much. Our extent of traveling was in the family van. I'm from Wisconsin, and so we would pack in the family van and drive across down to southern Texas, and then over the border into Mexico, which is where my grandmother's family is from. And some of them lived in southern Texas. And so I was so young, I remember bits and pieces of that, which really was ingrained. Like the moments I do remember were really ingrained in me. But outside of that, we didn't travel much when I was little. No one in my family traveled for business. We didn't take vacations. That was my extent of traveling when I was little. I wasn't really introduced to travel until my college years.
Yeah. So it sowed a seed, but you weren't sure that travel would be important to you until much later then, by the sound of it.
Yeah, I did not think that travel would be any part of my life. I didn't think much about travel outside of what many others think, is that it costs an arm and a leg. It's expensive. We can only do it once or twice a year. Everything, is these bucket lists and these popular destinations. Like I was sold on the same mindset and image about travel for so long as well. But at the same time, I also struggled to figure out, I was never someone who knew what I wanted to do as in a career or in my life either. And so travel was the furthest thing that I thought I would ever get into or ever do.
Yeah. So what was life growing up in Wisconsin?
Cold. No, it's Wisconsin is I'm back in my hometown of Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and it's a really great state to live in. I always say how grateful I am for the weather, even though yes, we do have a lot of very cold winters. The window of that tends to be pretty short. In my later years, I was able to escape every winter and travel somewhere warm. But we're pretty lucky. Like in the U.S., our geographic area, we have such intense weather in so many different parts of the U.S. that in Wisconsin we're pretty lucky. Like we have it pretty safe outside of like just some bad snowstorms or thunderstorms sometimes.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I guess the size of America just makes that inevitable, doesn't it? So many mountain ranges.
Yeah.
Do you think it's true that all the states of the US are like separate countries in their own right?
Yes, I think the cuisine, the accents, even just the dialects. There's some places, some states where they say things that I don't know what they're saying. It's like another language. And the culture is different in a lot of places. And then the topography and geography, everything is so different. It's a really diverse country that we live in, which we oftentimes, like being in it, in your own state, in your own city, in your own hometown, you don't often think about that until you get outside of it.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? We have an English saying, you could be so close to the wood you can't see the trees.
Oh, yeah. That's so true.
But things changed a little for you, didn't when you went to university. You got this is when you got exposed to travel for the first time. So how did that come about?
Yeah, like I said, I was never someone who knew exactly what I wanted to do for a career path. When I graduated high school, going into university and having to choose a major, thankfully, I didn't really have to choose the first 2 years of university. You kind of just try out different things, and there's a lot of prerequisites. But it wasn't until my third year of university that I was switching schools. My mom was going through a divorce, and I was moving from Arizona, where I went to school at Arizona State for 2 years, and moving back to the Midwest. And I chose to move to Chicago. It was a big city. It was close to Wisconsin, but it wasn't, it was bigger than Milwaukee. And I had a small window of time to find a school to apply to. And I came across a hospitality and tourism management program at a school called Roosevelt in Chicago. And I applied, I got in, and it was a 2-year program. I only had 2 years left of university. And that was the catalyst to planting the seed in my mind that I wanted to travel when I graduated 2 years from then. And at the same time, I had no clue how I was going to be able to do that. This was back in 2018 to 2008 to 2010. That's the year I was in the program. I was in my early 20s. I was a broke college student, like a lot of others. I had no idea how I would be able to afford my travels again. I thought, like everyone else, it was very expensive and very hard to do, and also unsafe as a girl, as a woman, to be able to do. But I, made a pact with myself when I graduated in 2 years that I would go on at least just a backpacking Europe trip that I had always thought about. And I was able to make that happen. And that was the catalyst to what got me to where I am now and what I do in my decade-long journey.
So was it for traditional reasons that you thought, well, Europe's a good place to start? And where did you begin in Europe?
Yeah, the only reason I thought Europe was because when I was in high school, that's when I started hearing about the concept of backpacking Europe. And it just stuck in my mind at the time. My best friend at the time and I were like, when we graduate high school, before we go into university, we're going to take off a year and we're going to go backpacking. Of course, our parents didn't let us do that. So that thought just kind of put to the wayside. And so it wasn't until I graduated university when I had the time and I saved enough money and I had the freedom and flexibility that I was like, well, I'm going to do this backpacking Europe. And so I chose to fly into Ireland for a couple different reasons. I found that Dublin, Amsterdam, Barcelona, cities like these in London tend to have they were cheaper flights than others coming from Chicago at the time. And also it was my first trip traveling solo, and my mom's friend had an ex-coworker living in Ireland from Ireland, and she invited me to come stay with her family for a week or so. And so I was like, that makes total sense. It's affordable for me to fly into Dublin. I'll stay with a family. It's my very first time traveling abroad, going on my own, and it'd be a good buffer. And that was why I chose Ireland. And I kind of did like a loop from Ireland back to the mainland to England, and then before I went home after a month and a half.
So was solo travel what you thought it would be?
I didn't think anything about solo travel. I didn't think anything about travel. I thought it was going to be a fun trip. I didn't know anything. Had no expectations. I didn't really base anything off of, even though I was in this hospitality and tourism management program, met a lot of foreign exchange students from all around the world. But the conversation, the narrative about the benefits of solo traveling and why women travel solo and what travel solo, like that narrative wasn't happening back then. And so I just knew once I was in school, I always struggled with anxiety and depression over the years. And so when I graduated, I felt this pressure of figuring out life. And so I was like, I'm going to go on this backpacking trip. I'll come back and I'll figure out my life. So little to my surprise that travel, I was like, wow, like this is feeding me in so many ways I never imagined. I had no one else to reference from. Because remember, this was far before like social media and influencers and blogging and all of that. I didn't have inspirational, empowerment stories from others who were doing this. I just heard about backpacking Europe. And so it became a surprise after I kept going and kept going and kept going, country and city after country after city. I was like, this is beyond what I ever expected. I don't want it to stop.
Yeah, no, it must have felt like an absolute adventure to. So it was the independence that really appealed to you then.
Well, I'm an only child to a single mom, so I've always been independent. I've always lived on my own. It was this sense of going where I want, doing what I want, not having a plan, not having anyone else's opinions about the plan. And it was also just a sense of exploration. I was always chasing this sense of curiosity of what else is out there? What does this place look like? What am I going to see there? And, it was a combination of different things. And I also realized that it was a lifestyle that was making me happy. One of the reasons I didn't go right into a corporate world was because I didn't want to sit in an office. I didn't want to wake up and not want to go to work and have to go to work, or I didn't want to ask a boss if I can take off. Here in the States, I think people have 2 weeks total a year vacation. I didn't want that to be my life. And I recognized that at 22 years old when I graduated university. But I didn't know what I wanted out of life. I just knew what I didn't want. And travel was allowing me this lifestyle and sense of freedom in so many different ways, and also healing me. Again, like I said, I struggled a lot internally ever since I was younger with anxiety. And it was fulfilling me and making me happy. And that's what the journey I was looking for in my 20s.
Yeah. Well, I think sometimes it's important to figure out what you don't want as much as what you do, isn't it?
Oh yeah. Yeah, I mean that gives you so much clarity on what steps to take and what decisions to make and what to do with your time and energy, even though, we're in our life or in business, whatever it might be, we don't often know things until we learn or until we experience them. But if we can sit down and really be truthful to ourselves and say, even though I don't really know what I want, what do I not want? What are my non-negotiables? What are things that, I will intentionally avoid or not do because of X, Y, and Z, because it won't be fulfilling to me, because I know it's not what aligns with my heart or how I want my life to look like. And, if we apply that to business, relationships, careers, all different things, I think it's just a roadmap to helping us design a more meaningful, happier life and path moving forward, even though we don't know all those answers right away or what that's exactly going to look like.
Yeah. Well, we as young people, we feel we ought to know all the answers before we go, but as the older we get, we realize that actually not knowing the answers um, is actually quite important. Now, one of the unique aspects of traveling both solo and backpacking must be the fact that you're not always alone. You constantly have this opportunity to bump into other people. So how did that change things? Did you meet some interesting people?
Oh my gosh, yeah. Yeah, that's a big misconception about solo travel, especially solo female travel, is that it's lonely. It was the opposite of lonely, sometimes so much so that I had to intentionally be alone. Again, I'm an only child. I'm used to being alone. I love being by myself. And that's one of the beauties of solo travel for me, is that I have the option to when I want to spend time with people and when I don't. Um, but when you're traveling, you're always around people on the plane, on a train, on a bus. I stayed in hostels traveling, and which I absolutely loved. And that's a great opportunity to meet other people, to meet like-minded people, to meet locals. I, you know, there's so many options. You can go to a local coffee shop. You can go to a local market. You can start a conversation with people. I met so many people around the world where we would spend the day together, or we'd spend a couple days. I had met people that we met up again in other countries and traveled for a few days and then parted ways and went to another country and traveled again together. And I would visit their home countries. I would meet people who would say, well, when you come to my country, like come stay with me, because we met in another destination. And I did that. I was meeting people all around the world. So I always had the option to be around people, but I also had the option to have time to myself, to be alone, and without that pressure or the guilt of having to create itineraries for others or to make a decision for what to do for the day. And that's something I love to do.
Yeah. No, it's a great opportunity to connect with people. And as you say, um, would you say it was almost like a comfort in a way to know that if you chose to go somewhere, there was the opportunity to reconnect with somebody?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I mean, especially as a budget traveler like I was, to be able to afford to travel on my own funds to over 84 countries over 10 years, I had to be very creative with how I traveled and how I saved money and spent money. And again, this was before all of the resources, tools, apps, platforms, everything that we have today. But it was a lot of, that human connection, the meeting people, of going to stay. I met a couple when I was on a boat tour in Thailand. They were from India. So when I made my way to India, they invited me to come stay with them in their home. And I had a friend from school who was in the Peace Corps in Macedonia, and she recommended going to Macedonia. And I stayed with this family who had these apartments. So there's always different options for me, but it was a comfort that I knew I was never going to be alone. I knew that I always had that option if I wanted. But that's one of the beauties of traveling too, especially solo, is that you want to be alone sometimes. You want to go to places where there's not a lot of people. You want to go to places where you can just sit with your thoughts and sit by the water and go for walks and enjoy life sometimes on your own.
Yeah, that's that's an interesting perspective, isn't it? It's, I suppose, um, if you are comfortable being alone, you naturally are more inclined to realize you can make those choices. So, no, that's an interesting way of looking at it. Now, in your notes, you expressed not only an interest in Europe, but you've highlighted Indonesia, Peru, and Mexico as favorite places. What was it about those locations that have left strong memories for you?
Yeah. Well, Philippines too would be one of them on there. I mean, people always ask me, like, where's your favorite country that you've been to or your top five or something? And it's always interesting to think about that because there's really not a top favorite for anything. So many places around this world have left an impact on me or imprint on my heart for in different ways for different reasons. But something like the Philippines that I went to, it was my first time going to Southeast Asia. I had flown into Japan and absolutely loved, like, the people in Japan are absolutely incredible. It's stunning there. The spirituality, just everything is amazing there. So I went from there to Taiwan, and in Taiwan, while I was in Taiwan, I had my next trip booked ticket, which was to the Philippines. And there was a massive typhoon, super typhoon was going through the part of the Philippines that I was supposed to fly into. And so that had to get obviously canceled. And I didn't know when I would be able to go. And at the same time, I actually hurt myself. So I had to come all the way back home from Taiwan. And so when I was in home in recovery, I was Googling ways to make my way to the Philippines to help. I had no intention of why I was going there in the first place, other than, like, there's a big Filipino community in Chicago, and I had a lot of friends working in restaurants from Philippines. I'd heard about Philippines a lot. So that was my only reason for really wanting to go and explore there. And so I said, if I found an organization, and I said, I don't need anything. I'll make my way there. Just tell me how to get there, and I'll, pay for everything myself. And I just want to come help. And so I did, and I made my way. I don't remember how much time later, like a month or so. The weather was still awful, but it was an island off of the coast of Cebu, which is one of the bigger cities, called Bantayan Island, and it was as if a tornado went through this island, and it was devastating and scary because you got to take a ferry, and the water was awful. But anyways, the people were incredible. The people were so grateful and so kind and so welcoming and so generous with nothing that they already had. And I stayed for a month to try to help in any way, shape, or form with other volunteers. I went back 2 years later to revisit this. I took the same path to the same exact island to see it thriving now with how it's rebuilt stronger, and there was tourism now, and people were making money, and met a lot of the same people I'd saw before. So it's places like that and memories like that that really help shape who you are in the life that we have, because that's really all that we can do through travel, right? Like, what we learn, like the lessons we learn, what we see, what we experience, we can just bring that back with us to our home and apply it to who we are, how we show up in our own lives, in our own communities, in our own workplace, in our own families, and the decisions that we make. And it's experiences like that. So those places that you listed, there was always something that, really inspired me to be better and do better and feel better.
Yeah, no, those are good things to do, and it sounds very much like that you discovered resilient people in the Philippines.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. It puts so many things into perspective. And it's kind of funny because they have no idea what their impact on you is. They're just being. This is all they know. It's all that they have. And it was an island. This organization chose this island, Bantayan, because it was known to have a lot of farms and elderly and schools. There was a lot of schools there, and it was just all wiped out. And so they already had nothing to begin with, really. And then that was all taken away by the storm. And whatever they did have, they still were willing to give to a stranger, and they did that. And so they gave us shelter, they cooked for us, they, laughed with us, said thank you. Like, it was stuff like that that I bring back, and I'm like, life could be so much worse. Things could be so much worse. Material things really don't matter. You know, I saw what true happiness looked like in the eyes of people, and the value that they had on connection and family and gathering and food and conversation versus what we see in this materialistic world, and what we think is a problem, which really isn't. So
Yeah, yeah. It's that in perspective that we need to encourage. It's such a strong reason why we need to encourage young people today to go out traveling, isn't it? Because
oh god, yeah.
you can live in a bubble, can't you? And
Mhm.
not know what's going on outside. Now, you mentioned that one reason that perhaps you traveled was that you mentioned anxiety. I mean, I've sometimes felt lonely when traveling. Do you think travel, when it's done right, can be a force to find a way through the challenges that we all face from time to time, I guess?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, just being the founder of the Travel Coach Network, I see the work that a lot of our travel coaches are doing and who they serve and how they help them through travel. But I know for myself, I have always had an anxiety disorder ever since I was young. I've had like a heightened nervous system, and I've chose to never be medicated for it. I've always just tried to do things the most natural way that I could. With that said, travel is something that can really heighten anxiety, especially the unknown, fear, worry, so many different things can happen. But traveling solo with someone with an anxiety disorder taught me so much on how to about myself, of what am I capable of, how do I manage things, what are my triggers, how can I work through things, how do I make things okay when I'm scared or anxious or anything like that. So instead of trying to numb myself out of things, I face things head on and make decisions that um help me. I know how to tune into who I am. I know the environments that will heighten me, my anxiety. I know the types of cities that I don't really go to. I'm someone who, I don't like being around big crowds of people. I don't like busy touristy places where you're bothered and talked to a lot and try to be sold to. I don't like places where I always have to be looking over my shoulder of my belongings and safety. And so I think a superpower of me traveling solo was having anxiety disorder, because it enabled me to find these places that are so serene and in nature, and small communities and small towns where people like to call them off the beaten path or hidden gems, but they're really just places in this world that exist, that I was so grateful and honored to be able to find and visit, that fed my soul, that made me happy, that eased my anxiety. And yeah, it just taught me a lot about who I am and what I'm capable of.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Well, awareness is a very powerful tool, isn't it? I think when you become aware of something, um, it doesn't necessarily solve it immediately, but it gives you a bit of visibility, doesn't it? Do you think your own experiences of travel and what you've learned about reasons why other people travel? You've mentioned a few things about people travel because they get burnt out in their professional life. They might be suffering grief and they want a change of scenery. People are going through all sorts of life transitions and feeling maybe a certain sort of disconnection from the routines that they suddenly found themselves in. I mean, do all these different flavors that we humans have to put up with? Sometimes we have the wind behind us, and sometimes it's a headwind. Do you think this mixture of emotions that we have when we travel, and what you've seen was kind of your inspiration for wanting to make your mark on the travel scene?
Yeah, that's a really great question. Going back to where my mindset was during my travels, it started obviously with what travel was doing for me, how it was helping me, and at that time I wanted others to. I felt compelled to empower and inspire others, and particularly women, that they could travel, it was doable, that it is incredible, that there's amazing places around the world, that they can help themselves in different ways, just that they could. But the conversations I would have with people, and I hear a lot of, other travelers say the same thing, those that would ask them about their travels, how did you do it? And weren't you scared? And how do you afford that? And how do you know where to go? All of these questions. That person would have these limiting beliefs that the industry would sell them, that you have to go to this luxury or all-inclusive place because this destination is not that safe. So everything must be gated, but look how, personalized this experience is. Or I had talked to people who were like, Sahara, we went to Italy for 2 weeks and we worked with a travel advisor, and I don't want to tell you how much we spent, and everything didn't even go right. And I'm like, oh my, I just wanted to shake them and say, you can do so much more and see so much more in your own ways. And so that was like the catalyst of, I knew I wanted to be able to inspire and empower people and help them be able to experience some of the things I'd experienced and seen in this incredible world. And that's when I realized that there was such a disconnect in the travel industry of how it was marketed and how it was being sold. And it was very cookie cutter and very generic and very surface level of go here, see this, bucket list destinations. Everyone's going to the same places, all of these things that are now issues, right? Over tourism, people can't afford to go to places, and the whole industry is competing with each other for travelers because everyone's in luxury now, and every cruise line offers the same thing, and every hotel has the same amenities. Like, it's all the things that I saw happening. And I said, at the same time, there's a whole world of travelers out there that I had hundreds of thousands of conversations with over the years, just organically, on the bus, on the plane, in my hostel room, community center, who was traveling because travel was doing something for them, that travel was helping them in some way, that it was making an impact on them in some way. And there was also the rise of the digital nomad happening around that time too. And people started quitting the 9 to 5 to travel the world. It became like a tagline. I had heard about even executives, corporate, quitting their high paying jobs to travel. And all this was happening. And I'm thinking, why is it travel that people are turning to during these times in their life? Why is it travel? And if travel is so meaningful to us and travel is doing something for us in such personal, incredible ways, why isn't that reflected in the industry when it comes to marketing? Why isn't that talked about in the experiences that are offered and provided? Why isn't that how travel advisors are helping people when planning and booking trips? So I saw this void that was happening in the industry. And there was just this disconnect between what was happening in the world, the actual world of travel and travelers, and then the industry as a whole. And that's what inspired me when I started my own wellness travel coaching in 2018, and soon after, in early 2019, founded the Travel Coach Network to build that platform and help pave that path for others. And so that's what brought me to what I do today in the Travel Coach Network.
But of course, it almost in spooky parallel, the moment that you were putting all this together was the moment when we had this pandemic thing come along.
Yeah.
So that was both a huge challenge for the business world, but in terms of travel, do you think it really made more people think about how they might travel in future when this horrible thing will hopefully be over?
Yeah. I get the question often of like, oh, I'm sorry, the pandemic must have really impacted your business. Well, yeah, it did impact my business. It did wonders for the Travel Coach Network and the travel industry as a whole. And here's why. Yes, there was a lot of talk about, is travel going to come back? If it comes back, when it comes back, if we're ever going to be able to travel again, is it going to be the same? Everyone who knows and believes about travel knew it was going to come back. Travel is a vital tool in our lives to live and be. Like everyone, we need travel for business, we need travel for our well-being, we travel for our sanity, everything. There's a reason why the tourism industry is as big as it is. So it was going to come back, but it was going to come back differently. And it came back in ways that would have taken more than a decade if the pandemic didn't happen. There were self-care as a whole, even beyond travel, but like look at the corporate world. Self-care was catapulted to the forefront, wellness, uh, who the companies that people worked for, the companies that people bought from, how they spent their time personally, the jobs. So many people didn't go back to their jobs that they worked for. They realized, hey, I don't want to live that life anymore. I had time to really reassess what matters most to me in my life and how I want to feel and my own mental health. And that's not it. And that's why we were seeing things like the travel industry starting to talk about wellness even more. So that was around the time that I started my wellness travel coaching business, which I focused in the business travel industry. Oh, I had opportunity after opportunity. Every company out there wanted to hear about how to enhance wellness for their business travelers. How do we get them back on the road? How do we help them not go back to the burnout epidemic that was happening pre-pandemic? Because it was. There was so much research that I did on all of this. And then at the same time, I saw this influx of travel advisors, tour operators, retreat leaders, educators, people in the travel industry, and people outside of the travel industry coming into the Travel Coach Network saying, hey, I have such this personal connection to travel. How do I turn that to a business? How do I help other people in a way that aligns with me and the experiences I want to provide and the empowerment I want to give? And that's exactly what we do. So I was seeing this beauty happening in so many different ways, while at the same time allowing for the industry and time just to do its in the universe to do its own job and magic. And that's all we can do, right? We can't force can't force industries and times to change, but we're seeing all of that continue to grow in the travel industry in particular.
Oh, it's interesting though, because some people think, now that the revenge tourism uh, has been done with, people are going back to their own ways. But you seem to be feeling that the momentum is still with you.
Oh gosh, yeah. We're seeing that like it's only going to move from not industry to industry, but we're seeing this also in online space. And this is something I also talked to companies about back in the day, was that they started with the digital nomad, right? Everyone thought it was this crazy millennial who was careless, carefree, didn't really want to work and wanted just to be a vagabond around the world. And look at the rise of remote work and companies and the desire from people, and business travel grew, and leisure, and people combining business travel with leisure travel, and all this source of flexibility, yet their desire to travel because it was what it does for them personally. And we're seeing the content creator, the influencer, the online business owner, the opportunities that exist online, that people don't have to go back to the workplace anymore. People don't have to work for a corporate job if they don't want to. And they can make way more money without a glass ceiling on themselves than ever before. That's only going to become more abundant and apparent in the industry. So, where does that align with? The flexibility to travel, the flexibility to design a lifestyle and life that brings you happiness. And so, yeah, it's changing, but we're seeing it just happen in different ways. Yeah, and people are going to continue to prioritize how they want to spend their time, how they want to do a job, how they want to make money, who they buy from, what brands, and all of that. So it's going to just continue to grow. It's just a matter of time if companies kind of keep up with everything and what they do and how they change.
Yeah. So would you say that the way that you're framing your travel coaching network is around emotional and intentional travel?
Yeah, it's a good question. We hear a lot of buzzwords in the industry, like transformative travel and meaningful travel and intentional travel. And the Travel Coach Networks embodies all of that. But really, what we are at the heart of what we do is adding that human-centric approach to the travel industry. Because when we pull back the layers, there's kind of twofold that's happening in the industry. One, we're tech and AI, and excuse me, and the impact that that's making on the industry, and also traveler behavior, why people are traveling and how they're traveling. And so in the Travel Coach Network, it's really about helping people even beyond the world of um, people who already think that they want to travel. Because then that's what's happening in the travel agent world, travel industry. They're reaching people who already have the thought to travel. I want to travel. Who can plan my trip? Where should I go? What should I do? In the Travel Coach Network, we also believe that travel can be a really essential tool in your life for even beyond telling people they have to get on a plane and go abroad. So that's why we're seeing like health coaches, life coaches, wellness experts coming in and saying, "Hey, I don't want to have a travel related business, but I do believe that travel can help my clients help them go from X, Y, and Z, or how I'm helping them because of this time in nature or getting out of their comfort zone or boosting their confidence, whatever it might be." And then on the other side, we see AI and tech that's happening in the travel industry that is bring up the time and space for travel experience providers, travel agents, coaches, whoever it is who do serve travelers intentionally, um, be able to do the work that they're meant to do, which is understand their clients, build travel brands that are making an impact and provide experiences that change people's lives. And a lot of that got lost over the years because a lot of different things, but they were very caught up in the day-to-day tasks and running a business and keeping up with the competitors and trying to fit themselves into the molds that the industry had created. But now they are realizing that there's so much more to how we can help people and the type of business they can build. So whether we want to call it intentional travel, emotional travel, meaningful travel, transformative travel, they're all or wellness travel, they fall under it. Just depends on the businesses that they run and the clients that they serve and the outcomes that they're trying to provide.
Mm. Now you mentioned the role of AI in travel, and perhaps it's trying to interrupt things. But I also know that you're interested in the human side of travel. Do you think there's a tension between these two things? Do you think we should be putting in proper lines of delineation where AIs are kind of data tool that tells us what's happening versus the reason why travel, which is attention on a very emotional base, which surely can never be replicated by AI.
Yeah, that's exactly it, though. There's a lot of things that AI can do and will be able to do, especially in the world of planning and booking trips for people. But there's also a lot of things it will never be able to do, which is to interact with people as a human being, that one-on-one and understanding people. And that's why it's so important for the work that we do as in the Travel Coach Network for travel advisors in particular, or anyone who provides travel experiences, because it's really about getting to understand who the traveler is on a human level. Because travel can be, going back to the idea that travel can be used to help us feel, do, achieve whatever it is that we are looking for at each phase in our life, whether we're coping with loss or whether we are looking to celebrate or looking to decompress because we are busy moms who never give ourselves time. And we understand the power that blue and green spaces can provide people with. Travel really is about a tool, so it's a mindset shift that needs to happen. But adding these interpersonal and soft skills that AI doesn't have, as much of empathy it tries to tell you, on the other end that it really doesn't care about you because it's a robot. But a person will care. A person is, and we're seeing this shift happening in particular. I keep talking about the travel advisor world because that's like the dominated planning, booking trips, experience provider industry in the travel space. But that role it was already starting to evolve from these different names and travel advisor, travel designer, travel counselor, all these different things, travel agent, but it is evolving even further into outside of travel, lifestyle gurus, a shoulder to lean on, guides, coaches, mentors, because again, it's not about just planning and booking trips and saying, have a great vacation, hopefully you work with me again. It's about making people feel understood, that you're the one who gets them. So you're the one that they're going to come back to time and time again to help them have experiences that help them reach whatever goals they need next.
Yeah, yeah. Now, related to that, of course, is the travel industry itself. Now, it's a very mature industry. It's very large. It's probably turning over numbers in the mid to high trillions of dollars. Do you think it's evolving enough in the direction that you're hoping it's going into, or do you think there's more that could be done?
Yeah, I mean, of course, there's more that can be done, but I am very optimistic about the direction the industry is going in. And the reason being is that every industry is slow to change, right? Especially the tourism and hospitality industry. It's a very stubborn industry, very massive companies that have been set in their ways for a very long time. But what we are seeing happening is that traveler behavior is shifting so much, which is forcing these brands across the industry to also shift and change. And there's a lot of factors that go into why and what and how. But everything takes time. But the articles that I'm seeing, the surveys, the reports that I'm seeing, the conversations that I'm seeing, the topics that are being talked about are all great signs of where the industry is going, even in all of the narrative about tech and AI, is clearing up space for travel experience providers to really do the work that they're meant to do and help people have travel experiences that really not just go on trips, but change their lives. And that's really why I started everything that I'm doing from the very beginning, because that's what I believe in about travel, and we're seeing that happening in the industry.
Mm. One thing, and people are kind of expressing this in slightly different ways, and I'm always amazed at different kinds of travel. So travel based on different time. I mean, that's been around for a while. Perhaps spending less, or traveling slower but seeing more, or staying longer to understand a place rather than just tick a box. Do you think enough has been done in that to sort of open people's eyes? There is another way of looking at this.
Yeah, I mean, those are all pillars of or segments of the industry that are rapidly growing, whether it's slow travel or RV travel or, heritage travel is on the rise. Solo female travel has always been there, but is definitely booming. Women 50 plus travel as well. There's all these different categories that are happening across the industry. But I think it just goes back to human behavior as a whole. We as people we want to be happy. There's a lot happening in the world. There's a lot of stresses in our lives. There's a lot that we deal with, face, go through. And social media is like a mirror to us, and it enables us to reevaluate our own lives, our own sense of happiness. And and it's going to continue to do that because social media just continues to grow, and it's something we didn't always have before. And travel is that connector piece, is that piece that people often turn to create the lifestyles they want, to create the businesses that they want, to have the relationships that they want to have, to be the happy person that they want to be. It just happens to be the thing that people fall into to be able to do that. And so no matter what type of, category it is that people are interested in, I think it just boils down to we are looking for ways to be happy and design lives that make us happy and that are meaningful to each and every one of us. So whether that is spending more time in giving back in communities, whether it is immersing ourselves in understanding another culture and lifestyle, whether that is understanding our own ancestry more and family more, or something else. So I think it just falls under just the idea that human behavior and preferences are changing, and that just happens to fall in line with what's happening in the travel industry because of how important travel is to us.
Yeah. Now, in terms of why people travel, one thing we both have in common is that we both like podcasting. Now, you were saying to me the other day that you didn't always want to get into podcasting. So why was that? And why did you change your mind?
Yeah, I did not think that I would get into podcasting. And I don't believe I'm a huge I don't identify as a podcaster. I do have a podcast. It wasn't because I have a lot to do. I have a lot on my plate. And it was also an industry that I felt like everyone was having a podcast, and my personality is to always go another path. And it wasn't until one of my team members said, I think it's a really good idea to have a podcast. She does all the heavy lifting for me, and I just have all the fun by having the conversations.
And have you discovered some other perspectives as a result of chatting to people on your podcast?
Oh yeah, I mean, the Travel Coach Network podcast allows the space for travelers, a lot of our travel coaches, to share their story, and that's something I just really love hearing. We had someone recently on, one of our members, talking about how her cancer journey, and how she, instead of kind of getting smaller in her life and doing all the things that they told her she had to do, now that she was given a very short time they thought to live, and instead really went full throttle with her travels and adventures and living life, and how that helped her with her mindset and the life that she has now, and her recovery and everything like that. It's stories that we're able to put into the forefront just how incredible travel is for us in such unique ways that the industry doesn't talk about, that we don't often hear. And that's one of the things that I love so much about having a podcast, is being able to share what travel actually does for us. It's what we do at the heart of the Travel Coach Network.
Yeah. And it's the stories that can drive change, isn't it?
It drives change. It's the stories that can inspire others to think differently as well. It's the stories that can make people feel understood and connected. It's the stories that can inspire people to start a business, to make a change in their life, like you said. And all of these things, it's the stories in accumulation that create a movement, create a change in an industry. And that's what we're trying to do in the heart of the TCN.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's good fun. And I'm glad I've got you on the other side of the table for a short while.
Yeah, well, I do appreciate that. I had such a great conversation with you. I know it's always, that's the thing about travel. Even people not in the travel industry, travel's always a connecting piece in conversation. You can talk to strangers. You can have try to get a group of people to talk. If you tell them to talk about travel, everyone wants to talk about travel, and so I feel like we can talk forever on these episodes.
Yeah, absolutely. So, my gosh, time goes by amazingly quickly, Sahara. I just wanted to finish up by asking you about your hopes and what you think. What's next for the Travel Coaching Network, and what are your hopes and dreams going forward?
Yeah, well, thank you for asking that. The Travel Coach Network continues to grow. And my hopes and dreams is that one day every travel advisor, experience provider out there is also anyone in hospitality and tourism is also a certified travel coach, because having those soft interpersonal skills are so important to people understand the clients, the travelers, the consumers themselves, to provide better experiences. But yeah, I mean, we are just at the very cusp of what we are meant to be and do in the TCN. I'm thinking more of like the headspace of the travel world, where people have a place to find a travel coach. I mean, we do have it in beta if you go to hiretravelcoach.com, but there's so much more that we're going to be building and able to do. I just think everyone should have access to a travel coach to help them in beyond just the world of travel, but help them in their lives in general, how they want to feel in their wellness toolkit and their life design and everything. And I think travel is such an important tool, and that it can really do that. And that's the beautiful work that our travel coaches are doing. So yeah, I'm really excited to see where the Travel Coach Network goes, especially in the world of AI and how we are so unique and bringing everything back to that human-centric emotional approach to travel.
Wow, that all sounds very exciting, and I wish you and your team very well with that.
Thank you.
So, well, it's been amazing having an opportunity to chat to Sahara, and thank you very much for giving up your time and spending it with us today.
Well, thank you, Alex, for having me.
No, you're most welcome. Thank you.